Welcome back. Academy Award nominee David Petersen and world-renowned ballerina Misty Copeland joined forces to present a moving documentary that shines a spotlight on the transformative power of dance. Titled Lift, the film follows Stephen Melendez, principal artist and artistic director of New York Theater Ballet, as he guides underprivileged children into the world of dance. Let's take a look at the trailer.
My name is Steven. I came out of this shelter here because I joined ballet. I've come back to continue that program. It's 20 years later. I've traveled around the world performing and choreographing. I was the obvious choice to mentor these kids because I was someone who had gone through what they're going through.
I want to be a dancer in a ballet.
But going through that shelter, there's some trauma.
What happened?
Okay. Yeah, I don't feel so good. Okay, let's see.
Did you faint?
Do you have any movements that maybe make you think about moving between homes?
See. We're doing like this choreography about our backgrounds. We're like getting movements into the work.
Yeah, that's good. What do you think that means?
Strong, play.
Sure.
OMG. I want my family to get like up top of there. What is this?
It's not like for you. I have light skin.
I'm black, honey.
Director of the film, David Petersen, now joins me to discuss Lift. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kibin.
Now, I just love the trailer. It was so amazing, and I just felt so much just watching it. Can you tell us a little bit more about Lift, the documentary?
Absolutely. It's an 11-year odyssey, really. I started tracking a little kid named Victor Abreu, who, I didn't know what would happen with his life. I met Stephen Melendez, who ended up being the mentor to these children. And it wasn't until Stephen had a faint, which you see in that little clip, where I realized, oh my God, this is the film. And then that's where we really discovered, Stephen rediscovered his childhood.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And I like that you said, like, you kind of went with, like, what was going on. Like, this is where the film is taking us. Let's follow this. I think that's pretty amazing. What was the process of bringing these experiences to the screen? As we kind of see, like, it's like some heavy topics almost. So, what was the process of, like, bringing that, to the screen?
Well, I worked with this wonderful producer named Mary Racine, and she and I were sort of creative collaborators in that we knew, and we worked with Stephen in many ways, to be very careful not to show that sort of stereotype of homelessness. My own dad came from a home insecure background in the Bronx, in fact. And so I knew that I didn't want to touch on the kinds of things that we all see, people under cardboard boxes and so on, and dealing with social services. That all exists to some extent, but they're families. There are people all like us, one step away from home insecurity. So we wanted to show the aspirations, the love of these families that's genuine. And that's been always our experience when we discovered these families, and they let us into their lives.
And I definitely feel that, like, that inspiration and that, like, the light that so many of those children had, like, it just, like, shines through so much. So you definitely did a wonderful job on that. Can you talk about the Lift Community Service program and how much of the program inspired the making of the film?
Yes. So I was approached in a dog park where all great films begin by a guy named Richard Termini, who was a photographer for the New York Times. And he said, "Hey, Dave, I got a great idea for a film. I've been photographing this troupe of, this ballet company for years, and they take children who are homeless." This was pretty much only homeless kids, and they become dancers. And they said, there's this one kid who's danced all over the world. That turned out to be Stephen. And there's other kids that have show promise. That turned out to be Victor. Victor now, by the way, is a dancer with New York City Ballet, one of the greatest ballet companies in the world. So I said, okay, where's the money? Of course, there was no money, but I did have a camera. I did have a student and they held the microphone and boom, we were off and running to an 11-year journey to figure out what the story was.
Now, on this journey, you worked with, as you mentioned, Stephen Melendez. What was that experience like? And we saw in the trailer, that it was very moving for him. And I could imagine to go back to that place and kind of even under the same circumstances. So what was it like working with him?
I think justifiably he didn't want to go back to a childhood that he avoided. He danced all over the world, Estonia, Argentina, Japan. He had more, stamps in his passport than I have stamps at home, and my letters. I mean, he really constantly was traveling. He avoided that life, and coming back into the shelter was a traumatic experience for him. So that was the only sequence where I didn't shoot, because I knew that it would be a very difficult moment for him. And of course, we see what happens in the film. Without spoilers, it really affected him. But also, I knew suddenly, and Mary knew, that, oh my God, this is the film. This is the Odyssey. This is where it really begins.
And how did it feel for you to capture that? I feel, and I'm not a director, so I don't know, but sometimes you're on the sidelines capturing life, as it happens. How does it feel to be almost a part of that, but also on the outside kind of looking at that?
Yes, I think there's always a covenant, a kind of gift exchange, because I essentially am taking someone's life and I'm making it into a story and I'm making it into a film. And there always has to be some giving back. And so in a way, I didn't know how we would give back, but the exchange has been so beautiful. The way, the pride, the empowerment, the strength from all of these families. We had a Paramount Pictures premiere downtown. There's been a real sense of accomplishment at all levels. For the Lift ballet program, they feel that there's vindication. What Diana Bayer built 44 years ago is now being vindicated across the world because, we highlighted it. So there is an exchange. There's a kind of circularity.
Now, another notable person who worked on this project is world-renowned ballerina Misty Copeland, who served as executive producer. What was it like to have her support in this film? I am not huge in the ballet world, but I know who she is. Yeah. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty amazing. So what was it like to have her support?
So Misty came on board in 2017 when we were kind of struggling to figure out what the film was going to be, how we could raise some money, could we get PBS on board? That was sort of where we started. And she very generously said, okay, I will be an advisor. Maybe I'll be more involved later. And she has been sort of a guiding light in terms of her support. She's very busy. She has books. She has her own film called Flower out, but she has always been present, social media, all of those things. And she says, this is what I really believe in, because she herself came from a very similar background, home insecurity, in California. So she really feels a connection to these children.
Now, as I mentioned, it spanned over 10 years, nearly 11. Can you just talk about the relationship you built with, the people that you worked on this film with, especially the children? I got to hear a little bit about them. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
My God, these people are my family. Okay, so I'm a long hauler on the old documentary front. In that I didn't think I was going to spend 11 years on this. But by doing so, you get very, very close to the families. People like Shariah's father, who says, I know this means a lot to you, but it means a lot to me. And he puts his hand over his heart just before her performance. And he has come to every single public screening, with Shariah. And Shariah's, she's the one who says, encouragement is my favorite word. Same with Yolansi. Yolansi also, she had a lot of struggles in the film. As you can see, there's a big scene in which Stephen sort of talks her down from, violence and getting suspended. Again, she has come through in a very interesting, beautiful way. Also, Victor, of course, he has a success story too. But this film isn't about the big hurrahs, the home runs. It's actually about all the children like Shariah, Yolansi, some of the kids that I filmed that didn't ever get in the film. They are holding up people like Victor, and they're pushing them forward. That's why at the end of the film, there's this very slow movement. It's this sort of beautiful final dance that every single gesture is earned because those children came up with those gestures in concert with Steven's choreography. And that is so moving to me, to see those children walk across the stage very slowly.
Now, I also want to mention, when we think ballet, it's like one of the most prestigious art forms, and it's associated with specific backgrounds, and just the art itself is so soft and delicate. Can you just talk about the importance of kind of like showing that in comparison to the very raw, real, harsh realities of, just like dealing with homelessness? And I also loved the scene where the children are like in the park. Like if you're from New York City, like, those like parks, and like, although they're like fun places, they still have that like concrete jungle feeling, and they're doing ballet there. And it's just like, I just like to see that like contrast. So what was the importance of like kind of showing that and highlighting that?
And I think it's a very good point, because it's an aristocratic art form. It was created for royalty in France, so here are children from the Bronx, from the streets, who take that form and make it their own language. They say, you know what? This is strong. They hold, Shariah holds up her arms, which really ends the film in a lot of ways. That they take this aristocratic art form and they tell their own story, a story of homelessness that I've never seen on the stage. And the great thing about that performance is we saw people in the audience, people from the shelter community, people from the dance community, all walks of life come to that live performance, and all loving the dance form, because they saw their own story in it. And going back to Misty Copeland, she says, when I was a dancer, I didn't see stories about people like me. Same with Steven. Said in the film, he even says it. Said, I didn't see stories about people like me, but they are the voices that are changing this art form. And Shariah and Yolansi and Victor are all doing that.
Now, what was the response like from audiences? The film was released. So, what was it like to see people react to the film?
Well, we've shown it all over the world. We showed it in Cartagena, in Colombia. We've shown it, across the country, and there's a universal connection between this idea of people who have largely been marginalized or not recognized, have become empowered, and for these kids to become empowered in that last dance of the film is so moving. I kept contemplating about the title. Mary and I kept thinking, well, should we use this title Lift? There's about 100 films called Lift, right? But it was exactly the right word for what is happening to these children. These children are lifting themselves up. It's not someone else lifting them. They see a path to empowerment and they find their own voice. And that's what's beautiful.
Now, this movie has been just like a huge part of your life. 11 years, that's like almost like another, like raising a child almost.
Are we done?
So, what was something that you learned from this experience?
To be patient. I learned to be patient. I learned to not go for the stereotype. Always listen to the people who are speaking to you. They are speaking. Steven was speaking to me. Shariah was speaking to me. Yolansi was speaking to me. Victor was speaking to me. They were saying, don't go there. Don't go in that stereotyped direction. Just pay attention. And I had to think about that. Mary and I had to think about that in the editing. We had to think about it in, the shooting. We had to think about it in the final point at which we were saying, do we submit this? No, we're not ready because we need another 6 months to really scrutinize it and pay close attention to the voices that are coming from the community. And we did. And I think that is why it's gotten this incredible opportunity, this flowering to go through Paramount out to the world.
Now, how can people further support the film?
You can go and spread the word, because this is still a film that is done. It started from the streets, it started grassroots, and it continues that way. So social media, go to our website, www.liftdocumentary.com. Even if you just type in on Google, Lift Documentary, one word, you'll get it. And so there, and then everything with social media, Lift Documentary, that all helps get the word out about why the voices of these children need to be heard.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing this story with us.
Thank you for having me, Kibin. Thanks.
If you would like to see this documentary, please go to our website at www.liftdocumentary.com. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you miss any part of today's show, you can catch the regular cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Hemick on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.